But that's the way we live in this world today. No one's responsible. Oh, I don't have any money. Did you get a job? No. Well, maybe that's why you don't have any money. Did you go to school? No. Dropped out. You have to take responsibility for your failures. You can't get better until you say, Lord, I failed. And just go to God and just say, God, I blew it. I'm sorry. Assume responsibility for your failures, for your sins. Say, Lord, it isn't someone else's fault I got angry. It's not someone else's fault I hit him. It's not someone else's fault that I did this. I did it. And I'm sorry. You take responsibility for your sins, for your failures. You also take responsibilities for your successes. If you do well, then it's a good time to just say, thank you. When someone says, well done, you just say, thank you. It's okay. You have to be proud about it. Say, ooh, I'm so wonderful. But you can say, yes, thank you. I worked hard. If someone says, hey, how come you were so successful? Well, you know what? I worked hard. And I did the right things. Well, okay. When I started Youth for Christ Club, we started with a few kids, and after about 6 months or so, we had 150 kids coming to our club. So the director of YFC came to me and said, what'd you guys do? And I said, what did we do? We did what you told us to do. He said, you did what we told you to do? I said, yeah, we did what the book said. The book said do this, we did it. He said, awesome. I don't think he believed the book as much as I did. And then he used me for years as an illustration to leaders on how to do it right, which is do what you're told. And I've watched so many people in the Christian life not do what they're told and fail. And think, well, duh. Do what you're told. It'll go well with you. Obey your parents. It'll go well with you, teenagers. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, fine, fail. Well, I don't want to do what my boss said. Well, fine, get fired. I don't want to do what God says. Fine. Then you won't have joy. There's something about being responsible and therefore saying, I will do what I'm told. And you can take the success and someone say to you, how did you do so well in your Christian walk? How did you do well raising your kids? Well, I did what the Bible said. And I went to these conferences, I learned it, and I did it. It is amazing to me how many people will watch something and say, I don't agree. Like they know something. Well, let's see. You haven't done well so far, but you know better. So they go through financial peace, and they see the way they're supposed to do it, and then they say, but I don't agree. Okay, because that's why he's a millionaire, and other people are getting out of debt, and you're not. Because you know better. So when you take advice, you listen to it, and you do it. And you do what it says. The arrogance about being irresponsible is that we think we know better, when we do not. It would be much better for you in your Christian walk that you would submit yourself and do what you're told. I just wish every once in a while that I could just grab some people and just say, I'm going to tell you how to make this right. And this is the 5 things you need to do. And now you're going to do them. And them say, oh, yes, sir. When Mary Jo had cancer, we went to the doctor. Now, before we went, we prayed. And the Lord said she's going to be okay. So we went to the doctor and said, how are you going to make her okay? And they said, well, first thing we're going to do is you have to have surgery. I said, okay. So she had surgery. And then they said, now you're going to have chemo. She said, okay, have chemo. And now you're going to have radiation. She said, no. And I said, yes, you are. Yes, she is. She went through all of her radiation. And when it's all over, she's okay. I think next time we'll do it my way. Nothing. Why do we treat people who know better as if we know better when we do not? I had a lady sit in my office one time, came in, she said that she was having trouble in her marriage, and she had some questions she wanted to ask me. And so she began to ask the questions, and I just, and talking with her, and we looked at some scriptures, and looked at a lot of scriptures, and I shared some things about relationships, and you know, it was quite a long time, lengthy time, and finally she just said, well, I just don't agree. And I remembered, I can still see everything in that room. I can see her face. I can still see her looking straight at me and saying, well, I just don't agree. And I didn't lose it, but I came close to. And I just looked at her and I said, well, hon, that's why your marriage isn't working and mine is. But people who aren't succeeding are always telling us how those who are succeeding are wrong because they're irresponsible. First time I ever substituted in math, had 3 classes, 7th grade, 8th grade kids in 7th grade math, 8th grade kids in 8th grade math, 8th grade kids in 9th grade math. Guess who I had the worst time with? The 8th graders in 7th grade math. They wouldn't listen. And I thought, this is why you're in 7th grade math. You don't listen. You're irresponsible. You think you know better. Let's say, I have the math degree, but you know better. This is why you're in 7th grade math and failing. Because you don't listen. And Christians do it all the time. They're irresponsible. They think they know better. You would be better off saying, I know nothing. Tell me how to make it right. You'd be better off. But see, we're so full of pride that we don't want to admit we need to say, I don't know. I have decided that there are a lot of things in life I know a lot about, and there are some things I know very little about. And there's some things I know some about. The things I know some things about are harder to do than the things I know nothing about. Because when you know something, you usually don't know enough, but you know too much to ask. Right? Too much to ask. Now, I can put up siding on a house. It really isn't rocket science. It really isn't hard. Right? It's not really hard anymore with vinyl. I mean, really isn't very hard. And they put stuff that covers everything. Corner caps that cover the corners and things around the windows. There are some things you got to cut right. But the first time I ever put siding up, I figured it can't be that hard. But when I went to the place to buy the siding, and it was a wholesale place, I walked in there and I said, I need this much siding. And he said, what color? I said, white, to match the rest of the house. The guy that owned the house before me had ripped the aluminum siding off to sell it on one side of the house. And so I had to match this stuff. So I got this stuff. And I got it all in the box. He's got this long box. And I said, okay, how do they need something on the bottom. He said, yeah, you need a J channel. I said, okay. Okay, now we're at the limit of what I know. So I looked at him and I just said, how do I put this up? How do I put this up? Now listen, I knew a little bit. I'm not an idiot. I could have figured it out, but I decided, you know what? It takes some humility to just ask. And what do I care what this guy thinks? I'll never see him again. Have never seen him again. He's someplace in Chicago right now. Maybe. But he doesn't know me, and I don't care what he thought after. You see, pride would worry about what he thought. I didn't care. I just wanted to get the siding up. Sell the house, and the FHA to approve it. They needed to have the siding on it. So he said, well, the biggest problem you got is leveling the first row. I said, the first row. He said, yeah, at the bottom. I said, at the bottom. I've seen a guy put it up from the top down. And if you know anything of siding, and you put it on top down, every nail shows. But if you put it from bottom up, none of the nails show. Oh, fancy. I knew enough to ask. I asked. He told me what to do. I got the J channel straight, level, on the bottom, put the siding up, went up, looked good, FHA loved it, sold the house. Now listen, people, until you're willing to say, I don't know anything, and follow what you're learning, you're going to live irresponsibly, and you're going to fail.